Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in to the moderator's rollout of electronic voting at town meeting. I've got a few people here to explain how this is going to work, and I thought I'd start by giving you a little bit of background. Some may remember about 5 years ago now, we had a citizens petition to require the selectmen to use electronic voting, and that was debated and wouldn't have flown anyway. But what happened was it was referred to a committee that the town meeting appointed, one person to be appointed by the moderator, one by the selectmen, and one by the finance committee. Well, I appointed Brian Hone, the finance committee appointed Michael Schaaf, and the selectmen weren't able to come up with anybody. But those two spent some time studying electronic voting back in 2016. And it just was basically, it was too expensive and it was not really called for. That was their conclusion. Well, fast forward a few years, electronic voting has gotten very popular with a number of towns. I frequently hear from other moderators that they're very, very happy with it. And I thought I'd take advantage of Turning Technologies, which is a company out of Ohio that offers, like many do, a free trial run, and we're going to try it this spring. And if we like it, we'll buy it or rent it. The prices have come down, and the reason I thought it'd be important is because what it really does is it closes the loop on some of the votes that some folks may be suspicious about, particularly the 2/3 votes that I have to call by a visual, by the cards. I don't have to, but I often do. And these clickers and electronic voting is with these remotes that they won't open your garage door or operate your TV, but they're much like those. They're much faster. So fortunately, this company, Turning Technologies, has actually sold them to two neighboring communities. One is Rockport, and soon to be another customer is Manchester by the Sea. So I brought with me Pat Brown, the town clerk in Rockport. Thank you very much, Pat. And Bob Visnick, who's the moderator in Rockport. And they're going to just sort of go through with us how these work and what their experience has been. And of course, I have to my left town council, who represents a number of towns other than Ipswich, and some of them use electronic voting. So Pat, why don't you tell us, when people go to town meeting and check in, we now have poll pad, which you use that, right?
Yes.
So we don't have to, the old
sheets of paper going through the books and looking through paper, and you can just use a license or type a person's name in, and you immediately know that that person is who they are. And when check-in happens, we provide each and every one of our voters with one of these clickers.
And they get a lanyard with it?
Yep.
So they can put it around their neck?
Around your neck, and you don't lose it, and you don't share it with your neighbor, and that is your voting for the rest of the time that you're at town meeting. Sure. At the end of town meeting, of course, we remind everybody that they have to turn in their clickers. They're rather expensive to be losing. And when you go out and leave the building, you also have to turn in your clicker at that time as well.
So when people leave the meeting, when the meeting's over, when I met with the salesperson for this, his suggestion was just have boxes right by the doors, and people just throw them in there. And they're pretty durable.
They
you can
are.
throw it in the box.
And Bob reminds everybody at the end of the meeting to make sure that they turn in the clickers, and we have not lost one yet. Yeah. One person brought one home and then brought it back the next day. So they are very durable, but the only people that get them are the people who are registered voters. So if you have visitors coming in, they get a visitor sticker, they sit in the visitor section, but they aren't able to vote. Only voters get them.
So when people get them right when they
come in the door,
the poll pad. And I think what the plan right now is when people check in, we're also going to give them cards, and we'll have both, just as a fail-safe, just in case something happens. So then once they get them and they go in, Bob, tell us how this system works.
Well, For years since I became moderator, my concern was how do we keep the meeting relevant and how do we keep as many people coming back to the meeting and bringing their friends. And one of the inefficiencies that I saw was how long it took to vote and how frustrating that could be. And in our town, we have a bylaw that if I think it's 20 people doubt the vote, then we go to ballots. And so there are writings and people line up, and of course, you know, we also have standing votes and we count them, and we have sections, and we have to, you know, swear in counters and things. And it just
Let me
seems...
ask you, typically, how many people you get in a meeting?
We get between
200-300?
250 and 375,
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, so I thought that something like this was a very important thing for us to have, and I think like you said, initially they were very expensive. I looked to see what apps were available for iPhones. We all have the phones. We vote on Facebook. We're getting used to the concept of it. And at every meeting I would ask the crowd, hey, you know, does anybody in the technology world know of such things? Does anybody have deep pockets that want to help us pay for such things? And Pat got sort of tired of me complaining, and she took the bull by the horn and did a tremendous amount of research and actually spearheaded the purchasing of these. But now that we have them, I can't imagine running a meeting without them. We had a spirited debate. We had a debate that lasted a very long time when we were deciding whether to get them. People brought in concerns about hacking and accuracy and fraud and all sorts of things.
The Russians finding out.
The Russians finding out, and I always kid, you know, I say if you look down and if you see your numbers in Cyrillic, to give us a call, because that's a problem. But the machines and the software has been flawless, and Turning Technology's service has been tremendous, and it has worked out as well or better than I think both of us had imagined.
So in Ipswich, like in Rockport, we too have two screens overhead. We have, you know, the motions, and the article, and then the motion, and usually have a list of the boards and committees endorsements. The FinCom voted, 9-0 in favor, et cetera. And on the other screen, if there's any amendment, we'll put those up. Do you use two screens and have the electronic voting results broadcast onto one of them?
We do. We have one screen that is dedicated to the results of the electronic voting, and the other screen has the motion, and if there are amendments to it, we work as fast as we can to type in those amendments to have those in real time. We also have a voter's booklet that we've used for the last several years that has the warrant, and it has the budget if appropriate, and it has the motions as well. So there's a lot for people to look at.
Let me just interrupt you while you're saying that. I'm going to ask Nick to put up the Article 1 main motion slide that I showed you. He's got a PowerPoint slide, so that's going to block us out for just for a second so people see what the results of the vote are. After the debate and you call for the vote, you hit, what, 1 for yes and 2 for no?
Right, and you will find that you say that, of course, many, many times over the course of an evening.
And people will say, wait, is it 2 for yes?
Yeah, and it never changes. It's, 1 for yes, 2 for no.
And how is it that you know that your vote is getting recorded?
The actual clicker will tell you.
Okay.
It will turn green when it records your vote. And we typically give 10 seconds. I will start the vote, and there will be 10 seconds, and then the voting ends. And you can actually change your mind, and the machine will count the last click that you have made, and you can tell that it has been accepted.
Right. And there's a slide, and I don't think we have it here, but there's a slide that actually has the 10-second clock counting down.
Yes.
Right. So people can see, if they're looking, oh, I got 6 more seconds to vote. Yes, no, I'll go no. So they have, but then there's a definite time when the voting is closed.
Right. And there are certain votes that I won't use these if it's something that is pro forma and you've
Yeah.
done this a million times and you know it's going to be 99 to 1. We'll do a voice count, and because that'll be even quicker than the 10 seconds we allow for a vote.
Yeah, some of those early on, like the perfunctory things that,
Right.
that nobody contests, I'll just say, is there anyone opposed to this? No. And then we just, that passes unanimously.
Exactly.
You declare it and go on. So, yeah, there are some way you don't even need to use it. And then, I guess another question that some people might have is, after the meeting, are you sure that they got my vote? How about that? Because, every town has a few skeptics.
Pat, you want to take that
Are
one?
there skeptics in Rockport?
Oh, there are a few, and when we were using them
Something
these
about
the
the rocks
first
over
time,
there.
first time people were sure that their vote was
Yeah.
not being cast.
And what did they do?
Well, they questioned how it was that they could confirm what their votes were, and on the back of each one of the clickers there is a number. And there are reports generated that you can look at after town meeting. And if you are concerned about how you voted on a certain article, if you take the number down on the back of the clicker, we can pull a report that shows how you voted for every article in town meeting.
Well, I'm not going to allow people to do that during the meeting, but they're welcome to go to the clerk's office the day after. And is the technology such that it could be readily available the next day?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as the meeting is over, the technology has it.
And
in a
just to
report.
reassure people that that doesn't mean you know what all their votes are.
Right.
If they don't write down the number,
I couldn't find them.
you wouldn't know because you don't record which number was given to which voter. You
No.
just have numbers and results.
That's a
Exactly.
good point. Let's button that up. And when
It's
the
a
check-in
secret
process, when Bob Visnick goes in and says, I live on 25 High Street, you give him a clicker, but you don't write down which clicker he has.
We don't know which one they have. It basically, if you push a button and you get a green light on that clicker, your vote has gone through.
Okay. So George, what's your experience been with other towns with this?
Well, I represent the town of Belmont, which has a representative town meeting,
Right.
which simplifies things a little bit because there's a fixed number of town meeting voters. So I think it's 270.
Yeah.
So they only had to order that and a few extras, 300. And they do, in order to be able to take roll call votes, identify which town meeting member has
Right.
which unit. But there was a lot of concern in the beginning about this same issue, about whether votes were being registered.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we were able to demonstrate, the town clerk and the moderator were able to demonstrate to all the skeptics to their satisfaction very quickly that this is a very, very reliable technology, that when they see the green light, yes, in fact, their vote has been entered. And once there's broad public acceptance of that, I think, again, Belmont town meeting members today would never want to give this up. It eliminates an enormous amount. I think, we don't really think about it, especially those of us who are involved in putting on town meeting, how much kind of friction there is in counting votes.
Yeah.
It's time. It requires the care of making sure that your tellers are ready to go and they're doing their job accurately, and people are watching that process, I think, with some anxiousness, and they'll worry about whether somebody in the non-voter section has snuck into the voting
Right.
section, and it creates a certain amount of anxiety and discomfort around votes that I think affects people's maybe enjoyment of town meeting is too strong a word, but feeling like it's
Anxiety
a
level.
worthwhile use of their time. And as soon as you get to the point where you can just effortlessly record votes that people are confident are accurate, it removes a lot of that anxiety. And then the second issue, which is much more important in an open town meeting, is the anonymity of your vote.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons why I think the citizens petition was presented here a number of years ago, was the belief that people ought to be able to vote their conscience without necessarily having people, having the peer pressure or the or town officials not liking the way they vote. This allows people to vote their conscience, and nobody knows how they voted. It does take away a little bit of the ability to look, 3 rows over and see how that person you like or dislike is voting, but that's not a bad thing to have to make up your own mind free of those kinds of influences.
Yeah, and I think that all these things play into generally improving the attendance at town meeting, and that's, I think, that all of us really want to do.
The other thing, it's the anonymity of the vote, but it's also if you don't want to vote and you don't have yes or no, you don't vote.
Right.
Simply. Right. And I noticed going through reports that there are a lot of people who simply abstain from a vote. Right. Whereas when you had to stand up, everybody knew, first of all, how you were voting and whether or not you were voting.
So, and we would get groans, somebody would call the question, and that's a 2/3 vote, and then you'd have to get the tellers, and then you'd have to count it, and that's several minutes.
Right.
And now that's
instant.
20 seconds.
Right. Right.
Well, that's part of the friction I was referring to. Also, is that people grow impatient with particularly procedural votes, just because you're dragging this out, and another amendment that we have to vote on, or moving the question that we have to vote on, and making that simpler makes that less contentious.
And it allows people to concentrate on the debate and the subject matter.
We have votes for reconsideration. We're able to do that, and within a half hour of a vote, and that votes for reconsideration happen very quickly, and you're suddenly back at something that you thought you had already taken care of.
That reconsideration varies from town to town. We're fortunate here to have a fairly strong bylaw that sets a very high standard for reconsideration. It has to be, I think it's new evidence, a couple other things at the moderator's discretion, and then it's a 2/3 vote. So
we just need the opposing party within a half hour.
It doesn't have to be.
Within a half hour.
Yeah.
Within a half hour.
Within a half hour.
I mean, I would analogize this to rules in like baseball to make the game go quicker. You're not changing it. We're not changing the meeting at all. We're just taking away things that detracted from the efficiency of it and perhaps the enjoyment of it, in hopes that it's really about the debate and it's not about the mechanism of the vote. That's just hopefully automatic.
It's an immediate response.
Right.
When that response goes up on the screen, I mean, you're hearing the audience, they're participating, who they were rooting for, what they were against. And there's interaction from the audience just by the oohs and ahs that are coming forward after the vote.
How many meetings have you had it, and how long did it take to catch on?
We've done 4, 2 annuals and 2 specials.
Yeah.
So we've done 4.
And the first one, people were kind of skeptical,
The
but
first one, similar to what you're doing, we had Greg Alexander there. He was absolutely wonderful.
he's the vendor. He's the
the person who will be
vendor.
at your town meeting.
Yep.
Does a great job. He answers questions. He knows the product. So the second one we did on our own, and we got our IT people involved, because especially when you're amending things on the fly. So we do have our IT people running the software at the time. So it helps. It helps, and if something goes wrong, they're there immediately to fix it. So there's no time wasted on town meeting floor. So after the second one, the third and fourth one went very smoothly. We had no problems at all.
And
people took to it. They were looking forward to getting those clickers, and it's just this. It's immediate in it, and seeing it on the screen in color. It's just really nice to
and
have it.
you bought 400? Did you say?
We bought 400.
And what's interesting to me is that, so because we're looking at the same vendor, they'd be the same clickers, we're looking at buying maybe 500. And Manchester, I believe, is also going to go with these folks and have some more. That'll be 3 neighboring communities with close to 1,500
The
clickers.
same clickers.
George, is that something that towns do from time to time? Sort of
Well, not
borrow
yet,
them?
but Greg pointed out when we met with him that
Right.
we could share and we could borrow, and all that he would have to do is essentially make sure that the town's license
The
for that
software was
meeting, the
updated.
software would accommodate that many clickers. But we have the opportunity, the town would have the opportunity to either just rent an extra set of clickers. If, for example, we had a big vote like we had last year on the schools,
Right.
and we anticipated 1,500 people, you could rent 1,000, but it appears that we could also borrow
Borrow them.
300 from Rockport and 700
Right.
from Manchester and get another 1,000.
The only thing for that is you'd have to schedule the meeting so that they don't
Right.
overlap. But that's certainly doable.
I think that Greg will be in Manchester, and then he'll be doing he'll be in Ipswich as well. So
Yeah.
I mean,
No, he came in January and, to introduce me to this, and I convened with the town clerk, the town manager, town council, myself, and the head teller, and walked through the whole process as we're sort of describing to folks here. Is there anything I missed? Anything else about the process that you wanted to add?
I think not, other than I am certain that it will work as well in Ipswich as it has in Rockport.
Okay.
It's good technology, and everybody will be well trained, and everyone's going to love them.
Okay.
yeah.
Well, thank you very much for tuning in, and see you at town meeting.